Hello world, my name is ZaffreRevolution, or Zaffer for short, and if you don't know by now, I have opinions on this series. I love it. Like, a lot actually. Every game has at least something I downright love about it, and even the weaker ones are never short of great as video games. The bar and expectations are just so high because the potential of this franchise is unbelievable, and I think that speaks volumes for the sheer quality the entries can provide. But not everyone's like me. Not everyone's had the luxury of running into this series by chance like I did. So, seeing me constantly talk about it over the course of many videos, one could only wonder what this series is really about and where to start in terms of getting into things. That's what I'm here to tell you about today. As a series veteran and someone who's played almost every game more than once, I have a good idea on what these games are about and how to recommend them to you guys. Being that you're watching this video, I'm assuming that this is your first time dipping into this series, so don't worry, I'll be gentle. With that being said, grab a snack, get comfortable, and prepare yourself to be educated because it's time to start choosing your first Tales game. To start this video off right, what is a Tales of game? The Tales of series, or Tales series, whichever you prefer, is an action JRPG franchise. Action JRPGs are games that tend to have a focus on long plots as well as gameplay that's real-time and focuses more on player skill alongside numbers and stats. This game series has a real-time combat system in every game, but on top of that, games usually have a team of 4 and multiple characters to play with and as, which is always a blast. And if that wasn't enough, almost every game allows for 4-player co-op, meaning that battles can be even more fun when you have friends or family who know how to play and can tag along. The games are a lot of fun to play while also having incredibly engaging stories and characters the entire way through. Seriously, if you don't care for the plot, you'll definitely care for the casts, as they get the most focused out of any of the games and it shows. My babies are phenomenal 99% of the time, which is a fantastic track record. If you're into long and detailed stories, 3-dimensional characters across the board, charming visuals, outstanding music, huge worlds to travel through, fun battles to take place in, or, you know, all of the above, this series is definitely for you. But Zaffer, you cry. There are so many games in this series. I don't feel like catching up now. Fear not, my friend, for this series has got you covered. Remember back to my top 10 favorite video game franchises video? Or if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Like, come on, man. In that video, I said the following. This is the Tales series. Let's call it the Final Fantasy of JRPGs. Let's call it the Final Fantasy of JRPGs. Let's call it the Final Fantasy of JRPGs. Yeah, I totally messed up that line and apologize for the confusion. What I meant to say is that Tales of is like the Final Fantasy of action RPGs. By that I mean that each game has their own standalone story, but with a few thematic similarities. Tales of Vesperia is more recent than Tales of Symphonia, but the two are entirely different stories. You don't have to play Symphonia or know anything about it to understand Vesperia. Sometimes games take place thousands of years before another game for some fun lore, but that doesn't make itself too apparent and is more for series fans and plot analysis than anything else. You don't have to worry about that crap. Now, there are direct sequels that work a bit differently, but those are special cases. Obviously, you'll need to play Xillia to understand Xillia 2, but other than that, you're good to go. There are references in various games, and there are even some cameo battles where you fight some characters from previous games just for funsies, but that's not that big of a deal and won't hamper your entertainment. They're just callbacks and cool secrets for series fans. Also, tough as fuck secret bosses, Jesus Christ! With that being said, you could theoretically start with any game that just looks the most interesting if they all don't have anything to do with each other. However, you might want a guide for this, as there are much better starting points than others. I'll run through each of the main series titles and give you a rundown along with some personal opinions on the games for whether they make a good place to start or not, all ending with my personal recommendation for the order in which you should play these games to best ease you into the series and get the most out of each title. A few rules though. For one, as I stated earlier, but just so we're crystal clear, I'll only be doing the main titles. That means no spin-offs or mobile games. We're strictly sticking with the big boys. Secondly, no sequels, because why the hell would you want to start with a sequel when I literally just told you have to play the first game in that miniseries to understand? Do you hate me? If so, fine. Go play Dark of the New World for all I care. Don't say I didn't warn you, little punk ass. And thirdly, no Japan exclusive games. If you're just getting into this series, odds are you don't feel like having to look up a translation guide while playing through a 40-hour minimum game or downloading an English fan patch. If you don't mind those things though, or more power to you, speak Japanese, well, that sucks because I haven't played a single one of these. I also want to take this time to tell you how I'll be deciding which game to recommend. The criteria is as follows: accessibility, quality, and representation. If the game's on a ridiculously old or niche system, then obviously most people aren't going to play it as their first anyway, so I wouldn't recommend that. I also want to recommend a game that's well received and good in this guy's eyes at least. I won't start you off with something bad like Dawn of the New World. And finally, I want to recommend a game that represents this series well. Does it have serious traditions? Are there refinements to the gameplay that make it great not only for fans but for newcomers? Does the game have multiplayer? Are there flashy special attacks that go by the name Mystic Arts? So on and so forth. These are the questions I'll be asking and what will determine what the best starting spots are for you guys who want to play these games. Anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's get right into each game, and if you like what you see, go for it. That, or you can just wait for the chef's recommendation. I wouldn't blame you. I am what you call reliable. To kick this off, I'm gonna bunch up Tales of Destiny, Eternia, and Phantasia. The first Tales game ever was Phantasia on the SNES, but we didn't get that until 2006, and even then it came out on the GBA. Long story short, don't play that. It's really, really bad. If you feel like getting it through other means, hey, there are some English fan translations on the game. But hey, you didn't hear that from me. Tales of Destiny will be our official start today though. This one's the oldest, and as such, it's pretty dated if we're not sugarcoating this. The story is basic, but to be fair, this was around the time where the cliche Chosen One story was just starting to become the new thing, so I guess it's passable. Combat is 2D and slow, but again, it's the first game. Eternia does things a bit better, making gameplay fast, and the graphics for both have some great sprites to complement the excellent music, but you know, as I keep saying, the games are dated. If you can get past that and want to start from the beginning, go right ahead, but I personally don't recommend that to you. Either way though, you're gonna have to get over some hefty prices for these things because hot damn, you aren't gonna be playing these games anytime soon. It's really a shame that these haven't gotten re-released yet though, because maybe then I'd recommend them a bit more, but I really do feel like you should start with the 3D games, not only for pricing, but because I think they're better starting points. If you really want to start with these first games though, either get over those prices or, you know. This leads us into the 3D games, my area of expertise and what most of you probably care about the most. If you're just now getting into this series, you're either gonna have to get really lucky or pay a pretty penny if you don't feel like starting with these games, so yeah, get over it. Tales of Symphonia was the first 3D Tales game released on the GameCube and also remade along with its sequel on the PS3, which is dope as hell. If you've heard about any of the Tales games, it's probably this one, as it's the most popular and what got many into the series. But is it good though? Absolutely, it makes for a pretty good start to the franchise. The story is one of the stronger ones, as it's a perfect representation of how this series works. A cliche start only to be twisted and turned into something completely unique and different. The cast is also incredibly intriguing, with each character having a developed backstory and more developing to do over the course of the adventure. Like Zelos, you know, my son, my favorite character, the best fucking character in the game, bitch. Being that the GameCube was the console of this game's original release, the graphics have aged a bit, but the HD remake cleans it up a bit and makes the game quite beautiful in all honesty. Especially the anime cutscenes, which look light years better than the original ones. Even still, the GameCube version doesn't even look that bad. It still has that charming aesthetic and runs at a 60 frames per second, which is something the PS3 version can't even say. I don't know why they did that, but you know, it's whatever. The soundtrack is also one of the finest in the series, with many songs being quite recognizable to series veterans, and for good reason. Gameplay though might be the one thing holding me back from recommending this as a first. Is it bad? Absolutely not. It's just dated and not as refined as later games. Again, the gameplay is good if not great, but there are much better games that help ease you into the series. This is one of those games you play after getting into the series and deciding that it's something you want to invest yourself in. But if that doesn't bother you, hey, go for it. This is one of my personal favorites in the series and in my top 5 without question, so it's not a bad start at all. And although this game has a very satisfying conclusion, it does have a sequel too. Not needed for the narrative at all, but hey, it's there. So if you really want more from the characters and story, then I'd say watch a Let's Play or walkthrough on it. Dawn of the New World is not good, guys. Following the most popular entry is the series Black Sheep, the one that stands out and polarizes fans a lot. Glad we're getting it over with and all that, but like, wow, the difference between Tweedle A and Tweedle B is astounding for sure. The story is a weird one, but I liked it for the most part. I especially loved the characters this time around. Well, everyone except for that's one. I'd say that they're a tie with Symphonia's cast in all honesty. They're great and incredibly underrated. What is undeniably top tier though is the soundtrack, because damn. Legendia has caused a split in the community on whether the game is truly great or not, but if there's one thing everyone can agree on, it's that the music in the game is some of the best. It's so diverse and unique, never dipping in quality for one track. I love it to death, and if you never get a chance to play this game, then at least listen to the music. It's Oh, it's beautiful. Used to be my favorite in the series as a matter of fact, until it was recently topped, but we'll get to that. Fun trivia though, this game was developed by a different studio than the ones who made the main games and everything else besides this in the video, and that definitely shows most in the gameplay. Hell, immediately you'll notice that this is one of the few games in the series that has random encounters, and I really don't like that, so that was fun. More importantly though, this goes back to the 2D formula found in the first games, meaning that everything takes place on a 2D plane. Combos aren't nearly as complex or even that satisfying to pull off in all honesty, and yes, this is a step down from Symphonia and the rest of the 3D games. I won't lie, this game isn't that great gameplay wise, but it's definitely a guilty pleasure for me. I absolutely would not recommend this as a starting point though. Besides it being on the PS2 and still not having any re-release to make it more accessible, the game's just too different to be a series first. There's also the fact that this game looks fucking ugly and nobody wants to play this first in a series that doesn't age too poorly. And there are a lot of missing traditions as well, like where's the multiplayer? Where are the mystic arts? Where's the cameo battle? There are a lot of extra defining elements in this game that make it feel more like a standalone title than a game in the series, you know? This is something you should play if you're completing the series or are curious as to how it differentiates from the other games in the franchise, but I wouldn't blame you if you skipped out on this one or just watched the playthrough. Like Dawn of the New World, right guys? Alright, let's get back on track. Tales of the Abyss is our next title, and if Symphonia isn't the most popular, then it's definitely Abyss. For good reason too, this game is tight. Yet another fantastic story and an even more fantastic cast. Every character sees so much development, making me prefer these guys over the ones in Symphonia and Legendia. Shoutouts to Luke, who over the years has become a template for how to write a well-rounded and developed character, let alone a good protagonist. The graphics have also aged pretty well. Regardless of which version of the game you're playing, cutscenes have a lot of dynamic angles and characters are all expressive in terms of their models, which make cutscenes and graphics stand out for the series, especially a game as old as this one. As our last non-HD Tales game, it's clear to see that this series didn't age most of the time in terms of its presentation and especially soundtrack. This is yet again another great OST to listen to, as Abyss has a very memorable and quality heavy track list. All the battle themes are great, all the dungeon themes are great, all the town themes, world map themes, boss themes, everything. It's so good. Better than Symphonia, I'd say, but still not quite at Legendia's level, although that's not to knock this game down at all. That one soundtrack was just so damn good. The gameplay is very well done though. It improves on Symphonia's battle system by allowing full 3D movement for the first time. While Symphonia took place on the 3D battlefield, you can still only move on a 2D plane. Whenever you'd switch targets, your movement would change due to you again being in 3D, but this time around you have the option to move around in the 3D space. It feels great and adds a whole new dimension to battle strategies and gameplay options, figuratively and literally. Combos are a lot quicker and easier to pull off than in Symphonia, making for gameplay that's aged extremely well and still is a lot of fun to play. The world map though is extremely laggy and has aged the worst in this game, at least for the PS2 version. This game was re-released on the 3DS to make it more accessible to the gamers of today, and the frame rate has been fixed tremendously. But, and this could possibly be a big one, you'll be missing out on the multiplayer and the graphics look a bit more jagged compared to the PS2. Judge for yourself though, the game doesn't change anything else beyond that to my knowledge. Overall, the game itself is really good and another one of the best in the series. I'd say that this is a better place to start than Symphonia, but is it my recommended starting point in the series? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. For real though, if you feel like this is a good starting point, a lot of my friends started with this game and agree that it's a great gateway into the series and they still love it a lot to this day, so take that as you will. Now we finally move on into the world of HD. Look at those colors, those graphics, the crisper sound quality, it's so good. For those of you who just can't play non-HD games for whatever reason or just want to get into the prettier games for starters, we're finally here! And we're starting off with a game that got me personally into the series, Tales of Vesperia. As the first sexy HD game, it's so fucking good. The story is about characters finding their place and purpose in this world, with so many twists and turns making for a very engaging narrative within the first hour of gameplay. And the cast is without a doubt my favorite in the entire series. I don't know if you realize how big of a statement that is, but that's a very good title to have, as this series is mostly known for its incredible writing on characters. My Vesperia babies are best babies, and just as I said earlier, this game is so gorgeous. I still think that art direction and style wise, this is the best looking game in the franchise. The cell shading is absolutely timeless, expressive, and impressive for being on the 360. The sound is also top notch, as the phenomenal cast is helped by equally phenomenal voice acting. Every other 3D game has had great voice acting, but this is the point in the series where the voice actors really start to shine, and it shows. And how about that soundtrack? Another selection full of incredibly memorable and amazing songs. This one is about on the same level as Abyss, but I'd say it's just slightly better and more memorable, but the latter may be due to the amount of times I've played this game. It's still fantastic though, and you'll definitely notice it if any of you ever pick up this game. Gameplay is yet another step up from the previous game, being just like Abyss, but like better. Tighter controls, higher challenge, and just making this gameplay style that much much better to play and get into. There were some Abyss exclusive combat features, but those were kinda meh. Here though, the exclusive shit is some good shit that only helped make the combat feel that much more satisfying and fast. Also, the world map isn't the laggiest little bitch ever, so that's nice. It's also a lot more fun to travel through than most of the world maps in the series due to a lot of optional areas and just a genuinely well-designed world map. The gameplay is so slick and everything is kinda perfect, no lie. Even still though, it isn't too modern to make it impossible to get into the earlier games. Sounds amazing, right? Yeah, it does. Here's the downside. This game is exclusive to the Xbox 360. I take it if you're this far into the video, you have tastes that don't align with the 360's lineup of games, so you probably don't have one of those. Sure, you can find it for cheap now, but still, that kinda sucks. It's also the only Tales game ever released on a Microsoft system by the time this video comes out, so although it's one of the better received titles, it's also lonely as hell. There was a re-release of this game on the PS3 though. It had extra content, all the scenes that weren't voiced now are, the post-game is even bigger and probably the best one in the series, and we're given 2 new characters to play as that are some of the most fun in the game. Sounds fucking awesome, doesn't it? Well, guess what? It's Japan exclusive. Yeah, this game has become a damn meme due to it not being localized even though everyone wants it to, and it's a shame. I still got it though, since the PS3 isn't region locked. I know this story forward and backward, and there's an online translation if you really want this game, but I don't blame you if that's too much of a hassle though. Vesperia hits all the right notes not only as a game but for an entrance to the series, but it's not as easily accessible in terms of being on the same shit as the other games are. Bamco isn't helping that case either, but hey, a brother can dream. Hold on a minute. So I recorded this before E3, and during said E3, we got revealed that Tales of Vesperia is getting a definitive edition being released later this year, and clearly I was shook because I never thought something like this would have happened. That being said, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition is releasing later on, and it's coming out on everything. The Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam for all you PC gamers. So this time they're making sure they're releasing the best version of the game for all countries and making sure that no one misses out this time, which is a very, very smart move. That being said, if you want to wait for that, I highly recommend that you do so. This game is getting re-released later this year, and clearly I didn't think it was before E3 and never thought it would happen, so yeah, this is awkward, but let's get back to the scripted stuff and stuff I made before I had to change stuff last minute. Following the near unanimously well-received Vesperia, we have the oh-so-controversial Grace's F. Not nearly to the extent of Legendia, but there's a lot of loving and hating with this game. Hell, I still have a lot of mixed feelings on the game, but I would still recommend this to people because you might find a lot to love about this game. It also makes a somewhat good starting place to the series, but I'll explain that more in future titles, and especially the end part where I give you my recommended route of progression. Anyway, let's go over this one real quick. The story is, well, it's something alright. It's definitely the cheesiest plot out of all the Tales games, and as such, it may or may not be your cup of tea. It wasn't mine, for sure, but I would still say that it's decent enough anyway. The characters are also a bit below average for me. There are a lot of funny interactions and moments for sure, but they're far from the deepest cast the series has to offer. If you aren't about crazy character depth and just want an enjoyable group of personalities to travel with, this won't do any harm, but you know, people like me who don't really care that much. So. Graphics go for a bit of a different approach than cel shading this time, with a bit of a pastel color scheme, and for what it is, I think it's pretty good. Music is a bit weird too, some great tracks here and there, but it's mostly forgettable stuff if I'm being honest. As you can see, there are a lot of stuff that's up in the air on whether you may or may not like them, which is why I'm hesitant to recommend this as a starting point. But the gameplay is what defines this game as one of the best. Exploring the world is good in of itself, but the combat is still what I would consider to be the absolute best in the series. Everything is so quick and responsive, combos are satisfying to pull off while requiring skills to reach some of those high numbers, enemy AI is smart, and the game is challenging. Not always a fair challenge, but that's definitely overshadowed by the quality this time. Each character is an absolute blast to play as, making this one of the most fun games to play multiplayer. When the healer is one of the best characters to play as, I think it's fair to say that you're doing something right. If anything, I'd probably recommend this game just for the gameplay, but maybe it's not such a good idea to start a series off right when it peaks. Isn't that right, Xenoblade? We've just got a few more games to go. You're still with me? Talking specifically to future Zafre. How you doing, buddy? Tales of Xillia is our next stop, and it's a great stop indeed. For one, you look at the cover art and immediately notice, whoa, a female in the front? Oh, how far we've come. That's right, we've got our first female protagonist in the series, but not a standalone one. This title experiments with splitting the story between two different perspectives, and that's, Ooh, boy, I'm not really a fan of splitting stories into multiple perspectives. My logic is that I'm gonna play them all anyway, so what exactly is the point? It could be argued that it makes games replayable, but this is a 40-hour JRPG, not something you replay often like, say, Sonic Adventure. Here though, it's not that bad, and I'd say that you should just play Jude's story if you ever play this one. I know, Mila's our first female in the spotlight, but her storyline focuses so much on her that the others get left out in the dust. Jude has a lot more focus on everyone on top of Mila, making him the best choice for a full picture. Mila's more for a second playthrough to see those moments where she steps away from the group for a bit. If she's too hot to ignore though, I can't blame you, she's bait material. But even still, Jude's story gives both all the characters and even Mila the respect they deserve, so you'll still be getting some great Mila love as well as love for the rest of the characters like the whole game should have been. That's enough on that though, because even still, the story is one of the better ones, returning to the much darker and more mature themes and plot points this series provides. And the cast is my second favorite in the entire series. The characters are so full of life, conviction, and personality. They're incredible and I love them. The graphics are also pretty damn good. Just a bit above Grace Zeff's visuals, but they work and are a lot more expressive and animated. I really love this game's art style though. The actual designs of the characters are some of the best and the spells look drop dead gorgeous. This is also the game where Ufotable begins to do the anime cutscenes, and while they look great in past titles, from this point on, they're unreal. Oh my god. Look at this. Look at it. The world's design and layout is also so unique and put together expertly to help engage the player more, and I'll be damned if it didn't work on me. The music is severely underrated and some of the best in the franchise. Everything sounds so high quality and grand. It's some great shit and one of the best soundtracks. I put it right below Legendia, to be honest. Gameplay is pretty different from Grace Zeff though. Weird, right? Well, it'll make sense in just a second. See, Xillia is like a love child between Vesperia's formula and Grace Zeff's combat. It's kinda hard to explain, and if I tried we'd be here all day, but rest assured, it works well. Really well. Everything is as fast as it was in Grace Zeff while not being too hard to grasp, while incorporating some elements from Vesperia, making for a great middle ground. I'd argue the Xillia combat is only second to Grace Zeff, but I think they're both objectively just as good for different reasons. I just personally prefer the previous entry. My only real issue with it is that it's a bit easy. Is it because I'm a Tales of Professional? Maybe, but I just know that the footage you're seeing is on hard mode and I almost forgot that I even put it on that setting. That's a very small issue though, and one that probably won't even matter to a bunch of you. If this sounds like a great place to start, that's because it is, and I completely support you picking this as your gateway into the Tales series. Really, the split story is the biggest turnoff for a series first, as this is a feature never put in another game to this point and it isn't done too well, but like I said, just pick Jude and you should be Gucci. And just like Symphonia, this is a game with a sequel, so if you want more from these games like this asshole, then that's pretty good too. Unlike Dawn of the New World, it's really fucking good too. Like, holy shit, Xillia 2 so good. So good. Oh my god. And just to wrap things up, I'm gonna bunch up the latest two games, Zestiria and Berseria. I don't think anyone should start with these games, to be honest, but I'll quickly go over them regardless. We do live in a world full of choice, after all. Zestiria's story is one of the weaker ones with a slightly above average cast, but I honestly started enjoying both more and more as the story went on. I just wish the quality was as high as it was in the later parts from the beginning, but it still isn't Grace's levels of disappointing. The graphics are pretty damn good, having a refined Xillia engine, but the music is easily the best in the franchise. Hot damn, this OST is a banger. Not a single song is anything below great, making it one of my favorite soundtracks in all of gaming. The gameplay is a bit rough though. It's like a clunkier version of Grace Zeff, and like, how do you even do that? It's not bad per se, just not nearly as good as the game it's based off of. Also, the camera is shit. So shit. Surprisingly though, I found myself enjoying the world map much more than anything else, as this game has a humongous open world to explore. Besides the soundtrack, that's easily what this game excels at the most. The world map is tight as hell, so if you like that sort of gameplay, this game will make you drool, unlike the rest of it, to be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of Zestiria. Like, it's good, and as a game, it's great because, you know, serious quality, but as the latest game, I felt a bit underwhelmed. But then we got Berseria, and holy fuck, top 3 without question. Probably my second favorite game, but I'm still debating whether I prefer it or Symphonia. Also Xillia 2. shit's hard. The story is so different and gives a spin on the formula established in Zestiria, making this one stand out, and the cast is another one of the finest. I'd say it's right behind Xillia, to be quite frank. We also have a standalone female protagonist this time around, and she's one of the best characters in this damn franchise. Why argue over who's the best girl in the series when you can be the best girl? These are the real questions we should be asking people. The graphics are even better this time around, and the game completely runs at 60 frames per second. Each game always had the combat running at 60 frames, unless your name is Legendia or Zestiria, but this time the whole fucking thing is 60, and it feels so good. Again, the art style is on point, character designs are lit as fuck, and the music is magnifique. Gameplay brushes up on Zestiria and again stems from Grace's F. It's a lot heavier and slower paced than Grace's, but it's still really good on its own merit. Combos chain together so well, and the new mechanics make for a lot of risk versus reward gameplay. It was fun, and like Grace's, I enjoyed playing as different characters in both Zestiria and this game. More so this one though. I just really love Berseria, man. Just don't start with it though. It's the newest one and will make getting into the older ones a lot harder, so for your own sake, just don't do it. Wait on this one. It's good, and it'll be worth it. I promise. And with that, we've gone over all the games that qualify for this video. There are quite a bit to choose from, each offering their own unique experiences that have various similarities and elements to make them all connected. It's pretty damn cool if you ask me, making for a lot of great starting points. But it's time for my personal recommendation. What do I think you should start with? In what order does a series veteran such as myself think would make a good path to follow? This game's gameplay is pretty modern, but more importantly, it's a blend between the older games and the newer ones. Grace's F took this series combat into a different direction than the older games, and Xillia was a way to ease players into that new combat. This is why it's such a great place to start, because you can go either way. If you want to play the older games after Xillia, you won't have that much of a learning curve, and the same can be said for the newer titles, if you want to go that direction anyway. Not only that, but the game itself is really good while not being too difficult to get would-be players comfortable. There are some things that bother me as a series veteran in this game. Besides the split story, there's no cameo battle, and that's something that's a really cool secret, and it's always great when someone first discovers it in their first Tales game. But in a future title, you actually get to battle Mila and Jude for the cameo battle, so, you know, that's something. That's really my one hesitation though. Other than that, as I said earlier, Xillia is a great starting point for the series and my personal pick. After that, it's a matter of deciding whether you want to play the older games first or the newer ones. If you're going back into the series, I say literally play the games backwards. After Xillia, go to Vesperia if you can, Abyss, maybe Legendia if you're curious, and finally Symphonia. Maybe the PlayStation games too if you can get your hands on those. If you want to go towards the newer games, play them from Grace's up, so that'd be Grace's F, Zestiria, and then Berseria. Once you're done with one end of the spectrum, a way to sort of ease into the other side would be to play the Xillia sequel. Like I said, the game is really fucking good and challenging too. Think of it as a test of your skills at that point, and a way to acquaintance yourself with the other side of the series playstyle. Pretty good idea, yeah? Kind of proud of that one, if you couldn't tell. If all of this sounds way too complicated, there's one final option, and that is just play the games in order of release. Not a bad idea, but I like mine better, and I worked hard to come up with it, so, you know. Yeah. And if you still want more, there's of course the mobile app Tales of the Race, spin-offs, sequels, new games, and hopefully sometime in the near future we'll have the Japan titles translated officially and localized. If not, there are always online guides for those and other means. Honestly, this video is long, but it's really not that hard to get into this series. There are a lot of great starting points and different paths you can take. Mine's just an idea of where to go, but by all means, do as you please. This is a magical series and I just want more people to give it the love and attention it completely deserves. It's my favorite video game franchise, so hopefully it can end up impacting you even a fraction of how much it impacted me. Happy gaming, you guys. This is a good one.